All right, my renowned fam, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Morrison. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And before we get started, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that stuff. That's the best way you can help support my channel and my podcast. I really appreciate the love and support you guys give me. Today, I have an awesome guest lined up for y'all. The professor is in the house, Professor Paul Thornton, a leadership expert. He's taught leadership. He's done leadership seminars. He has coached leadership. He has done everything you can possibly imagine when it comes to leadership. He is going to explain all of that to you coming up. So I'm not going to draw this out any longer. I hope you guys enjoy listening to Paul. And so without further ado, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. And Paul, my first thing that I really like to ask people like you is, how did you get into helping people learn leadership?
Well, it's interesting story. I played hockey in high school, and my team was always in the middle of the pack. We were never winning the league. And it got me wondering, why is that? There were one or two teams that were always the champs. So I concluded it had something to do with the coach. And I figured out, what is the coach doing differently than my coach? And that kind of sparked my interest in, what do the best coaches, teachers, leaders do to bring out the best in people? I went to college and I had a great course with Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard. And that further stimulated my interest in leadership and what the great leaders and coaches and managers do. So that was kind of my introduction and spark that got me going down that tangent. I think it's a fascinating subject. It's a complex subject. There's a lot to it. Every time I think I got it nailed, a new thought comes to mind. It's like, nah, that's not quite right. It's something different. And, it's an ever evolving topic that I have spent the last 40 years studying, thinking about, writing about, giving people feedback on their leadership style, things like that. So it all started when I started playing hockey.
That's awesome. Where did you grow up that they had? Because I grew up in the Midwest and we don't even see ice, let alone a hockey team.
I grew up in Massachusetts in a town, Canton, Mass, that had a pretty good hockey program, and played hockey, youth hockey, high school hockey, and then went on to college, played college hockey, and tried to play a little bit afterwards, but I had reached my max of skills and wasn't going any further than that. So that was it.
That's awesome. I love the sport of hockey. Again, never played it, but I think hockey is an awesome sport because people talk about how fit soccer players have to be, but man, hockey, because when you're on the ice, you're going 100%. And you get pulled off the ice for 2 minutes, and you can't let your body relax because you don't know, like you could be on the bench for a minute and then you go through another line change and you're back on the ice and you have to be back at 100%. It's an insane sport from that perspective.
It is. Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
Hockey players' hearts, like they have to be some of the strongest organs in their body, man. Like I couldn't imagine just the blood flow those things have to pump on a daily basis for them. That's awesome, and plus it's just a brutal sport,
It is
slammed into the boards. Like, love it. So that's awesome. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Paul, real quick.
Well, I have spent the last 40 years, I mentioned, studying leadership and teaching it. I've been a college teacher for 20 years. I worked for a big company for 20 years. I've written a number of books on the topic. I've done some executive coaching. I've done seminars and workshops. some in the US, some internationally. So I have a pretty broad background of the theories and applying it. I've also, I've been a manager, I've been a leader, I was a college coach as well. I coached hockey for 4 years at a college. A parent, grandparent now. So in all of these roles, leadership plays a part, So I not only have a pretty good grounding, I think, in the theory, but also I've tried to apply these theories and concepts to the actual jobs that I was in, and found out that theory doesn't always work the way you hope it does, but
Right.
I've learned a lot. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I've done.
That's awesome. And then, so that sparked a thought. I know dangerous. Grant has a thought.
Mhm.
Um, but so one of the things I get the most pushback for in my philosophy and in my coaching and teaching and mentoring is that, people say, oh, well, I don't want to be a leader. And I tell them, well, tough, because you were born, therefore you're a leader. Everyone is a leader. Now I get a
Mhm.
lot of pushback on that because they're like, oh, not everybody's a leader. I disagree, because I disagree on two points. One, in order to be able to lead other people, before you can even think about doing that, first, you have to be able to lead yourself. If you can't lead yourself, no one's going to willingly follow you.
Mhm.
And then the second point is leadership, and my definition of leadership is all about influence. Um, it's not about a title, it's not about a position, a salary. It's simply the impact and influence you have on other people. Now, yes, titles, possessions, things like that do have impact on people, but your character and your integrity has more impact than any of that stuff ever will. So from those two standpoints, we are all born leaders. And it really frustrates me when someone says like that person is a natural born leader. No, they may naturally have charisma. They may have been born with charisma, which is a good quality of a leader to have charisma. But no one is born a leader. They are taught to be leaders, and everyone is a leader. So, what are your thoughts? Do you completely disagree with me on that?
No, I don't completely disagree. I think everyone has the potential to be a leader. I think there's some people that don't want to be a leader. They don't want to make the tough decisions. They don't want to give people candid feedback. Um, they don't want to be out in front. They don't want to be the first to do something. They don't want to stand up and present their views. So, I think everyone's got the potential. You can learn it, and you can develop the skills, and you can figure out how to influence people, but you also need to want to do it. And in my experience, some people are happy to sit in the meeting and say very little, and not take a big leadership role, and they're happy with that. And there's other people that step up and present their views and their vision and their message and ideas, and they're willing to challenge people, and they're willing to give feedback, and they're willing to go against the majority.
Mhm.
Being a leader is not an easy job. I mean,
Right.
sometimes you're going totally against the crowd, and everyone wants to go in one direction. You're saying, no, that doesn't make sense. We need to do this, and here's why, and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of the way I see it anyway.
Right. And I asked that question a specific reason, um, because I always like to finish after I get the feedback. I always say I said everyone is a leader. I didn't say everyone is a good leader, and
Yeah.
that's an important distinction. Just because you're sitting quietly in a meeting, that makes you a bad leader,
Yeah.
right? And I understand you don't want to. It's not a
Mhm.
matter, I wish life was all about what we wanted, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to get shot,
Mhm.
but it happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's about what you do and making the most. And I think one of the big things, and you actually already mentioned it, that people need to understand, and I think it's not recognized enough, is that everyone has a specific style when it comes to their leadership. And I think a lot of the times when people are like, oh, I don't want that responsibility, it's because they're seeing the style of a particular leader that doesn't match who they are. And they think, oh, well, I don't want to be that person. And it's not the fear of the leadership, it's the fear of being that person. They don't want to be that super outspoken person. So how do you help people identify their styles? And how important is the style of leadership and what you teach?
Well, I think style is very important. It's the approach you use to interact and engage with people. And I basically taught my students and people I worked with that there are three basic styles. One is directing. You tell people what to do, how to do it, when to have it done by. Now, a lot of people think that's out of fashion these days, but if the person has no experience and no knowledge, they're a complete novice at the task, they want and need direction, so they welcome that. The second style I talk about is discussing. The leader asks questions to engage the person. What's the goal? What's the plan? What are the obstacles? You're getting their thoughts and ideas, and you're getting them to think through the steps they're going to take to get to the goal. That approach. When you use a discussing style, people are learning to think. They have to formulate answers to the questions you're asking. They're also learning to collaborate and work with others and build on the ideas of others if you're in a team setting. So that's all good. And then the third style is delegating. When you delegate, you're empowering the person to take action, make decisions, get the task done in their own. I'm a big believer that there's a time and place for each style. The leader needs to diagnose the situation and decide what style is going to help the person achieve the goal. Each situation is unique. Some people have a lot of skills and talents in one area, but they're limited or they're a novice in other things. So, what can I do as a leader to help them achieve their goals? And if I use the right style, it's going to help develop their skills and character traits as well. So, I think there's no one best style. You got to use a style that fits the needs of the situation.
I completely agree with that. And that's an intro. I've never heard leadership styles kind of explained that way. So I find that
Mm,
really fascinating.
mm,
And I think when it comes to, I'm going to use delegation as a
mhm.
good example because in my experience, a lot of people have problems delegating.
Yeah.
They feel guilty about it or whatever the case may be. Um, how do because in what you just described, it's vitally important that you're fluent and capable in all three styles,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? So how do people overcome, if I have a problem, if Stephen has a problem delegating authority to Paul to go do X, Y, and Z, then that is a shortcoming on my part. How do I
Mhm.
overcome that shortcoming and strengthen my weakness per se, so that I become a more effective leader?
Well, I think that part of being a good leader requires reflection. You have to reflect and think about what you're doing, what impact is it making? Is it motivating people? Is it engaging them? Is it inspiring them? So, if I really am not very good at delegating, I need to reflect on that and think about why. Am I afraid of empowering people? Am I too obsessed with holding on to the things I like to do? Um, and then probably I need to take some baby steps, do some little delegation tasks to people, see how they do, and then gradually do more and more. But if you're going to be a leader these days, you have to learn to delegate because there's just so much going on. You can't hold it all yourself. You become the bottleneck in your organization if you don't delegate. And besides that, you don't develop your people. You know, it's kind of like a parent who's making every decision for their kids. And I see that these days. And the kids aren't developing to think for themselves and to make decisions and take action
Mhm.
and what have you. The parent is making every conceivable decision for the kid, and they're not delegating what they should be to the child. And
Right.
these kids are not developing the problem solving and goal setting and all that they need to be successful. So
I
that's not good.
yeah, that is so good, and you're absolutely right. And it's not just delegation though.
Yeah.
Even in when it comes to like the discussing style that you had mentioned, part of that, and I would say that's probably where my biggest weakness is, which is I kind of I'm taking liberty, I guess, on what you said, which discussion is communication. So
Hmm.
I'm not the strongest communicator, especially when it comes to vision. My
Hmm.
wife and I just had this yesterday where I was like, "Hey, we should do this," and I left it, and
Yeah.
she had no context into what I was saying because I was
Hmm.
failing to communicate.
Hmm.
And so, how do leaders overcome that? Because one of the most effective and important things a leader can do is explain the vision, express the vision, and really get people sold on the vision.
Hmm. Well, I think the leader needs to present their vision so people can see it. Vision implies seeing. So if you're presenting it in a way that the followers can see what you're talking about, and also if they can feel what it's going to be like once you achieve that vision, I think those are great things. Um, I have seen some leaders provide too much detail and it kind of buries their vision. People don't see it clearly. Or leaders talk in a very abstract way and it's sounds good, but people just can't quite see it or relate to it, and it doesn't grab hold of them like it could or should. So the more concrete you can make it with concrete examples and pictures and images and things like that, the better. It's kind of like I was going on vacation with my family and I was talking about how great it was going to be at the resort and what have you. And they were kind of, nodding their head. Yeah, yeah, sounds good. But when I showed them pictures of the resort and pictures of what we're going to do deep sea fishing and what we're going to do playing tennis and what have you, that gave a spark of more energy and more excitement, or like, oh, that is going to be really great. And they got excited. So seeing it, making it concrete, helps it come alive. And I don't think enough leaders do that. They talk in, like I say, abstract general terms, and it's kind of like, okay, it sounds okay, sounds good, but it doesn't generate that excitement that you need.
I agree with you completely. And something else that I see often is people do realize the importance of vision, and they realize they need to communicate it, but
Mm,
like you said, they haven't reflected enough and really learned
mm.
their capabilities, and what they end up doing is over explaining,
Yeah,
overselling,
yeah,
which
yeah,
overselling is just as detrimental as underselling.
yeah. I
And
agree.
yeah, overselling is a super a super bad thing to do,
Hmm.
because ultimately, when you undersell someone, you once you realize you've undersold them, you
Hmm.
you can re-engage and bring them back up. It is
Hmm.
really hard to bring someone back down the
Hmm.
spectrum once you've oversold. That is a really
Hmm.
hard task to achieve.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, Steve.
So another specialty of yours is stress management in the workplace,
Hmm.
and you have a pretty cool formula to that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, my formula is pretty simple. It's D When D is greater than CS, which is coping skills, you have a stress reaction. So all of us have some number of demands that we need to get done every day. You know, work demands, family demands, social demands, whatever it is. You and I could make a list of the things we need to do today. And it could be mundane, like going to the grocery store to buy milk, or writing a report, or reading a book, or who knows. But we have a list. And then our coping skills is, how do we deal with our demands? You know, how do we get it all done? How do we prioritize? How do we make decisions? How do we delegate? How do we do whatever we need to do to get it done? I think coping skills also includes relaxation techniques, which is really taking care of your body, and exercise, which is important for taking care of your body and mind for that matter as well.
100%.
So depending on how good our coping skills are, influences how many or what level of demands we can handle. We all have a breaking point. When our demands exceed our ability to cope, we have a stress reaction. And that can be psychological, worry, anxiety, things like that. It can be physical, ulcers, high blood pressure, or it can be bad behavior, people yelling and screaming and fighting and things like that. So I think it's important we all think about what can we do to reduce our demands, and what can we do to improve our coping skills. Sometimes you can look at your demands and you can say, do I really need to do all these things? Are they all necessary? Leaders sometimes look at all the meetings they go to and they say, well, I really don't add value at half these meetings, so I'm going to cut out half of them. Or some meetings go on for an hour when you really could have everything done in 20 minutes.
When it could have just been an email.
Yeah, or an email, right? Don't even have the meeting, right? Or there's procedures and practices that no longer add value, but somehow they keep doing them. So what can we do to cut down on the demands is one part of the equation. The other part is, what can I do to improve my coping skills? A lot of people, I find, when their demands get really, really, really heavy, they stop their coping skills, especially relaxation techniques like yoga, meditating, working out. They stop doing those things to deal with their demands. And that's not good.
All right, everybody, I just want to interrupt the podcast really, really quick and take a minute to tell you all about the brand new Renowned coaching system. This is a system I've personally designed and put a lot of thought and effort and love into. It's an amazing system. Let me tell you real quick why it's an amazing system, because you get real-time analytics. You get to see exactly where you were when you started, where you currently are, and how close you are to achieving that ultimate goal that you set at the very beginning. You get analytics for everything. More importantly, the accountability with this system is the best you'll find anyplace else in the world. I get to see everything that's going on and make sure that you are staying accountable to the goals you set. It's truly powerful. You guys just got to see it for yourself. Go to renownedleadership.com, go to the top right-hand corner, click book a call. You'll get to come talk to me personally, and I will personally give you a tour of this system. It is truly amazing. It's one of a kind, and it's truly, truly powerful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to show y'all. That's all I got to say about it. So let's get back to the podcast.
It's important not to do that. When your demands increase, you almost need to increase your coping skills, meditate a little bit more, go to yoga, don't stop those things that help you stay centered and focused and productive. When we get stressed out, our productivity goes down, and we don't want that. We don't want that for the leader. We don't want that for the employees. So I think it's a useful formula to remind yourself of, what can I do to lessen the demands of my employees, and what can I do to improve their coping skills as well as my coping skills. And that'll help me reduce my stress and be more productive and be more effective.
How do you advise organizations to create an environment because a lot of what you just talked about, well, I totally agree with the demands. Well, as it demands are greater than uh, your coping skills equals stress reaction.
Mhm.
So I agree with that 100%. But also, I think there needs to be another formula for environment. Or do you just include environment into the demands?
Well, I think the environment affects the number of demands you have.
Okay.
If you have an overly demanding boss who's just piling things on you and your workload is just increasing, weekly, then, that's a situation that you got to deal with and you got to negotiate with your boss that I can't do 28 things in a week and everything can't be a priority. I need to, balance it better to get things done.
Hmm.
The company I worked at, we fortunately had a number of mini workshops and seminars on coping skills. Like we'd have seminars on time management and setting priorities and resolving conflicts and things like that. So we were trying to improve people's coping skills to help them with their, day-to-day work life and their personal life for that matter as well.
And that also, once people have better coping skills, and understand all those things, that's going to help with your environment management as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you mentioned it earlier, and I'm trying to remember exactly how you said it. I think you said, "I've been a manager, I've been a leader,"
Mhm.
and I caught instantly that you made a distinction between the two.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get really offended when they're told there's a difference between a manager and a leader.
Yeah.
Leaders does have managerial responsibilities,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean just because you're a manager you're a leader.
Hmm.
I think it means a little bit of the opposite. If you're a leader you're a manager,
Hmm.
to an extent. Can
Hmm.
you talk about your perspective on that and your definition between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question, Steve. I think managers use current methods, processes, procedures, approaches to get things done. Managers are more using the status quo to accomplish goals. I think leaders are into change. They want to change something. They have a different vision, a different view of how we can do things better. We can be more efficient. We can be more effective. So they want to change the process, the mission, the structure, the people, something. So leaders are all about change and improvement. Managers are much more about using current methods to get things done. And to your point earlier, we need both. We need managers because stability is important. Too much change is as bad as too little change.
That's a good
Um,
point.
I was reading about one company that had like 18 different change initiatives going on. So lots of leadership stuff, lots of change, but it was overwhelming.
Right.
People didn't know what was important. They were stressed out, they were confused. Their list of demands was off the chart. And it wasn't good. It wasn't healthy, it wasn't productive. So again, we need both. We need managers because stability is an important thing, but we also need change. All of us, all companies need to continuously improve and change and grow and do things better and better. But you got to do it in a systematic, orderly way.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the way I look at those two. Both are important though. I know the label of manager has been a bit negative and the label of leader has been a bit more positive these days. We want everyone
Hmm.
to be leaders. Well, yeah, that's true, but we also need good managers. You need the skill set of both.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's where a big disconnect is. I'm so glad you brought that up because like I said, every leader needs to be able to be a manager as well, because the spreadsheets are important,
Mm, yeah,
right? But
yeah,
at the same time, you can't be so disengaged because you're being a manager that you're failing to be a leader. and
right.
and finding that balance, or
Hmm.
finding a counterpart, and that's like in my personal life, that is great for my wife and I,
Yep,
because she is very much a manager
yeah,
and I'm very much a leader and not a
yeah,
manager. So
yeah.
so we balance each other perfectly almost.
Hmm.
And so
I think
finding
that's a
that.
great, I think that's a great word, balance. Finding that balance between the two is so, so important.
Absolutely. And I feel if you just try to focus on being a good leader, you're ultimately going to fail. Your people are going to love you,
Mhm.
but your company is not. Right.
Mm,
And one of my favorite one of my favorite examples is, I was a soldier. I was an infantryman for 16 years,
mhm,
led tons and tons of combat missions. And part of being a leader in the military, when you're in a combat environment, is higher headquarters always wants a sit rep. They always want a situation report. They want to know what's
mhm,
going on because they can't
mm,
see the battlefield. You can.
mhm,
So they're constantly calling you, asking
mm,
for a sit rep, situation report.
mhm.
And I cannot tell you how many times I got yelled at because I wouldn't answer them.
Yeah,
I would just say, hang on a minute, like,
yeah,
oh, hold, like, I'll get to you
yeah,
in a second. I'm dealing with
yeah,
much more important things right
yeah.
now.
Right, right, right.
But then again, there's a balance,
Mm,
because if we start to go black on ammunition, which means we're running out of ammunition,
mhm,
that's when I need to be on the radio with headquarters, like, hey, we're,
mhm,
we're in this firefight, which, so I mean, the way it happens is, you know, me and my guys, we get in a firefight, I would instantly uh, radio back, or I had a radio guy that I would have radio back, like, hey, troops in contact.
mm,
They would give the grid, our location, troops in contact, and then they would go drop the radio, and it's time to fight. And then I'm
mhm,
hearing in my ear constantly, headquarters, sit rep, sit rep, sit rep. And
mm,
hang on a minute, hang on a minute, hang on a minute.
mm,
I'm
mm.
fighting, I'm busy.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but that communication piece is important, because then it's like, okay, now I need something. Now it's
Mm,
time for me to go from being a leader in combat to being a manager in combat. And
mm,
I'm working the logistics piece, or I'm working the people piece,
mhm,
the personnel piece, or whatever piece of the pie that I'm working in that moment
mm,
is just as crucial as the leading piece, as
mm,
well. And
mhm,
so having that, like we were just talking, having that balance is so important.
mm. Yep. I agree. I agree.
So another thing talk about is the intersection between management psychology and political science. And
Mhm,
I get the management, I get the psychology. I love psychology. Psychology is one
mhm.
of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
Political science?
Mhm.
Why political
Well,
science?
I think when I think of political science, it's kind of the angle I was pursuing in college was how do politicians acquire and use power, and what makes them effective when they use their power, and secondly, how do they acquire resources or allocate resources, based on their power. So I think leaders, need to, the psychology part, the more you understand people, the better. The more you understand how people think and feel, the more effective you can be as a leader. Secondly, the more effective you understand how to use power to get things done and how you can acquire power, I think the more effective you will be. So that was kind of the angle I took in college, that, what can I learn from the political structure that relates to leadership? And that was kind of the angle I went at. And learned a few things about what politicians do, right, wrong, or whatever, to acquire power and use it. So that's kind of how that fit into the leadership scheme.
And what were your results? What did you find? You know,
Well, I think over the years I boiled it down. I think there's three types of power that people have: position power, personal power based on their personality, and expertise power. So, as a leader, the more types of power I have, the more effective I can be. If I just rely on my position power, people will follow and will do what I say because I have position power over them. But if I use or have personal power, if I can connect with them through my personality and engage them and inspire them, that adds another dimension to my effectiveness. And thirdly, if I have expertise, if I have some expertise in how to lead change or how to build an effective team or things like that, that gives me another source of power. So my view was the more power bases I have, or more approaches I can use to utilize my power, the more effective I'll be.
but you have to make sure, again, it comes back to that key word of balance. You have to have that balance because your personality isn't going to resonate with every single person.
Right.
And so you also need to understand and have a firm grasp on your position power as well,
Mm-hmm.
because I may not like you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to follow you, but I have to
Mm-hmm.
follow you because you're my boss. You have
Mm-hmm.
position over me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having a good balance and firm understanding between those three is
Mm-hmm.
is crucial and essential. Some people don't give a crap that you're an expert,
Mm.
right? Like some people
Yeah.
just don't care.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Uh,
true.
So you need to understand yourself as well as
Mm-hmm.
have those solid, and this is my listeners are so sick of hearing me say this, but the first thing I teach when it comes to my leadership coaching and mentoring is personal relationships. Personal relationships are the
Mm-hmm.
key, I believe, to every successful leader. And that's where that comes in, because you have to understand which form of power, to your point, you're going to use to influence this person. If
Mm-hmm.
I don't care that you're an expert,
Mm-hmm.
then you need to figure out, okay, well, do I need to rely on position power or
Mm-hmm.
personal power to
Yeah.
influence me? If I don't
Right.
like you as a person, but I might respect the fact that you're an absolute expert in your field, well,
Mm-hmm.
then you can leverage that power to influence me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree, Steve, 100%. And I taught my students and others that, work to develop all three areas. Position power is really important, but so is expertise and personal power. And the more power bases you have, the more you can use those to connect and develop people and inspire them and what have you. And I totally agree. Some people don't like your personality for whatever reason, or don't really care about your expertise in some area, but you have to use your position power to, get them to get the task done and to do what needs to be done to achieve the goal. So, yeah.
So I want to, we're running out of time, and I really want to cover this last piece
Mm-hmm.
because I feel it's so important. And that is, organizations, in my experience, have often, and I'm assuming to your experience as well, have often struggled to align managerial slash leadership practices with an organization's objectives and performance goals.
Mm-hmm.
How do organiz well, my first question is, why do organizations struggle with this? And two, how do they identify that they're struggling with it? And once they have identified it, how do they fix it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think alignment is a very important topic. I think the senior leadership team needs to do three things. I think number one, they need to work as a team, and they need to get clarity and buy into the mission and vision. That's with the senior team. Number two, they have to come up with a strategy that's going to be successful, a strategy that's going to help them win in the marketplace. And thirdly, they got to align the key pieces in the organization, the structure, the systems, the people to support the strategy. And oftentimes, there's lots of reasons why misalignments occur. For example, you don't get everyone buying into the goals. There's people that see things differently. They have different goals. That people are on their own agenda. We have companies that have silos. Each department is kind of just worried about their department. They're not worried about the bigger organizational mission. People lack certain skills that are needed to implement the strategy. So there's a whole host of things that happen when you get into a large organization that tie into misalignments. So the leaders need to be mindful of this topic, and I think they need to do things to make sure any of the initiatives and programs and policies they're putting in place align with the strategy that they're implementing. And when misalignments are identified, they need to address them and correct them and make it more effective. When you have a fully aligned organization, I think it's a thing of beauty. I think everything works great. Everything's coordinated, integrated. Everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. You achieve great success. It's really a great thing to see. When I see a great athletic team or a pit crew at a racetrack, synchronized swimming, these types of examples, it's really fascinating to watch them perform when everyone is aligned and integrated and, supporting each other for that matter. So I think it is an important topic and something that the leaders need to address on an ongoing basis. It's easy to get out of alignment, and misalignments happen quite frequently.
Yeah, and it's a pretty challenging process too, because as an hourly employee, my my why basically
Mm.
isn't necessarily going to line up with the company's overall why.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how, and that's okay, right? Is it because we're not robots? We're
Yeah.
going to have our differences. So how do we encourage the buy-in if my why is different than the company's?
Well, I think one thing that managers and leaders can do is they can explain how a worker's work contributes to the overall strategy. They can show employees their customers using the company's products and services. Um, they can engage them in a way that they see the connection between their job and the bigger purpose the organization is pursuing. So it takes some hard work and time and effort, but I think the more you can make that connection, the better. Will it always be perfect? Of course not, but is it worth trying to get the people to see how their job connects to something bigger? I think that is meaningful and helpful and gets them excited when they can see their products being used by the customer and they had some part in creating that product. It can be very rewarding and satisfying for the employee.
No, I agree. And company culture is kind of ties into this as well.
Mm.
And a company's culture, and I've talked about this, written about this, is probably one of the most important focus as a company can maintain is to
Mhm.
always maintain a good, positive, constructive company culture.
Mhm.
And one of the things I feel like has kind of gone by the wayside is sometimes you just have to let someone go,
Mhm.
right? They're not going to
Yeah.
align. They're never going to align.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, look, this just isn't working. I wish you luck, but you can't stay here. You
Mhm.
can't sit here,
Mm.
right?
I think when companies do that, it sends a really big message to the organization that our values are important. We believe in them. We're committed to them. And someone who just doesn't buy into your values and they just don't fit, we're going to remove that person, even though they may be a great performer. You know, like I say, when senior leaders, fire that person or replace them or send them on their way, people go, people basically say, oh my God, these values are real. They really believe in them and they're meaningful. So it's a powerful action the senior leaders are taking.
Yeah, like you said, it just helps 100% with the
Yeah,
buy because suddenly, like you said, it becomes real to everybody.
yeah,
And, my pillar, everybody's like, oh, I got 5 pillars of this, I got 3 pillars of that. I have one, and that is
yeah,
integrity. And as
yeah.
long as my integrity is intact, whether it's as a company or as a person or as a family, it doesn't matter. As long as my integrity remains intact, then
Mm-hmm,
everything else remains intact along with it. My vision, my success,
mm-hmm,
all of it is tied
mm-hmm,
to simply to my integrity. And companies are no different. They're
mm,
living, breathing organisms. And as long as a company maintains its integrity, it's always going to maintain that environment, that culture, that leadership, that management. It's going
mm,
to. It's. I feel like when companies start to what's the word when negotiate. I guess that's not
mm,
the word I want. But when companies start to negotiate on terms of their integrity, that's when
mm.
they really start to fall into the trap and
Yeah,
really become toxic.
yeah. I think, Stephen, you make a good point too about having just a few core values, 1 to 3 to 5 at the most. But some companies that have 10, 15
Right.
values. I was reading about one company that had a booklet of 38 different values. It's like insane. People aren't going to remember them. They don't know what's most important, and it's too mushy and confusing. And of course, these senior leaders really weren't modeling all the values, so it
That's
really
impossible.
it falls apart very quickly. So boil it down to 1 to 3 or so, and practice those and live those and make those real, and you'll have a much better chance of influencing your culture and your work environment. Yeah,
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And, for me, like people are like, what are the core values of your company? Integrity.
yeah,
It's easy to remember.
yeah,
It's hard to live up to,
yeah.
but, no one's perfect. No one expects you to be perfect. Right.
Hmm.
So they understand that, integrity is a big goal
Yeah.
and we're going to fail at it sometimes. That's okay as long as we stay focused on the vision. But then when you go to the flip side where you have 38,
Mm,
like it's no longer hard to live up to it. It's
yeah.
impossible to live up to it.
Mm,
You're
mm,
not going to remember it. And something
no.
I want to really hammer home is of those 38, which one's most important,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because that
Right.
matters.
Right.
The
Right.
rank, if you have 38, then there's got to be a rank to them.
Right.
With my company, there is no rank. There is just
Mm,
integrity. It
hmm.
covers everything. And
Hmm.
so we know that when we work with our customers, when we work with our clients, treating them with absolute integrity is
Hmm.
is paramount. That means we treat them with respect, we treat them with kindness, we treat them
Mm,
with understanding. All of that encompasses integrity. As
hmm.
long as our integrity is intact, then when a client comes back and complains and is like, you said this and this is what I got, and like, hold on,
Mm-hmm.
our integrity is intact. This is actually what we said.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we did screw up, our integrity is intact and saying, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I messed up. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fix this and make it right.
Yeah.
And so my team, everybody understands that that is the single driving point of the organization is integrity,
Yeah.
always. And,
Mm-hmm.
and when it gets too clouded, too muddy, uh, then no one's buying the vision, no one's buying the success, no one's buying anything that you're
Mm-hmm.
selling. And then that again, that's just toxic. That's going to resonate with your clients or your customers. They're going to see that, they're going to feel that, and ultimately they're going to go find a different product or service
Mm-hmm.
because your values aren't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of the leaders that I have come across have the ability to keep it simple, clear, and focused. When you start complicating things and introducing so many different factors, people's head starts to spin and they lose, I don't know, focus, they lose their inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as meaningful and as impactful as it should be. So my message is keep it simple and you'll do a lot better, you know?
In the Army, we even have an acronym for it. We call it KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely right. And the reason the Army has that acronym is for that exact reason. We feel like,
Mm,
our battle plans need to be this
mm,
gigantic, complicated, complex wheel that has like a million different moving parts when the best battle plans are just crazy stupid simple,
mm, mm, mm.
right? Because the more
Right.
complex it is, the more is going to go wrong, the more that's going to fail, the more opportunity it has to fail. Just
Yeah.
keep it simple, man. It doesn't need to
Yeah.
be complex. People
Yeah.
don't even want complex. Like it sounds sexy, it looks sexy, but once you get it undressed, it's not sexy at all. It's
Mm,
actually pretty
mm,
horrible.
mm.
All
Yeah.
right, Paul. So we're up on time, but go ahead and tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and what you can do for them.
Well, I've written a lot of books and 22 to be exact,
Wow.
and many of them are available on Amazon. But I think there's a few that I would recommend, and I think they are very helpful to people, and they're inexpensive and they're a quick read. But the one I wrote on leadership styles is, I think, is a very effective book. I also wrote one on is your organization aligned? And I think that's a good one. And if you have any young children, I wrote a recent one on leadership development for students.
Mm.
So any parents out there that have kids in high school or coaches that have kids on their team that they want to help become more effective leaders, that's a good book that will, I think, give them a roadmap of what they need to do to be a more effective leader. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. My email address is pbthornton74@gmail.com. I do a lot of writing these days, and I do some seminars and workshops, not too much these days. I'm semi-retired. I don't like the word retired. I still want to add value. I still want to contribute. So I do some workshops and seminars, like I say. So um, I'm available if anyone needs help in that area as well. So
I
thanks for
love it.
having me on. It was great chatting with you, and hopefully your listeners will be better leaders and they'll make a bigger difference out there in their world.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Paul. And you're absolutely right because ultimately that's what a leader's job isn't about personal. It's about what you provide to everyone else. Because at Renowned Leadership, we believe every leader should be a servant leader, putting the world
Mm-hmm.
first, the people first
Yeah.
before themselves. Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last,
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely 100% what I believe.
Yeah.
And you should be modeling the example of just taking care of your people at all times, and then you take care of yourself. So thank you again. And of course, all of Paul's, his LinkedIn and all his URLs, and I will have links to his books on Amazon. Everything's going to be in the show notes, descriptions, bios, whatever platform you're on. You know the deal. Just scroll down and check him out. Click on his links. Give him tons and tons of love, likes, reviews, stars, whatever it is. Give it to him. He deserves it. Years and years of hard work. I really appreciate you being on here, Paul. And before I let you go, every single person that's a guest on the show has to answer one final question, but they have the honor of giving the last wisdom of the day. So my question to you is, what's your best advice on how people can lead like champions?
Be a leader, make a difference, go into every meeting, every interaction with the idea, how can I add value?
Add value. Absolutely. And that's what this show is all about, right? Just, we want to add value to people's lives. Even if it's just one person that doesn't, one person, you add value to one person's life, you change one person's life, your job on this planet is a success, and congratulations for that. So awesome advice, Paul. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Everybody, I appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much. Make sure you, when you're done giving Paul some love, you hop over to renownedleadership.com and give me plenty of love. Give me some comments. Give me some stars on this podcast. I really appreciate it, guys. I love you guys. And in the meantime, seeing you next week, don't forget, lead like a champion. Bye, everybody.
How I try to sleep, but you're deep in my mind. Got a hold of me. When I'm awake, I'm all blind.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I hope you all really enjoyed listening to Paul. Got a lot of value out of it. Say the same thing every week. You know the deal. All his links are in the show notes and description below. Scroll down. Make sure you go give him tons of love. Then head over to renownedleadership.com. Come give me some love. Schedule that complimentary one-on-one call with me. And let me show you everything I got going on. And I hope you guys have a great first week of October, and I will see you all in the second week of October. In the meantime, everybody, do not forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.